For more on the summit, we're joined by Neil Shenai. He's here in the studio. He's a lecturer at American University's School of International Service in Washington, D.C. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First I want to get your reaction to Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's keynote speech. He's saying that he wants his country to play a greater role in regional security, and I want you to interpret that for us.
Sure. I think there's two intended audiences of his remarks. The first, of course, are the Chinese. And what he's trying to communicate is that Japan will remain a bulwark of regional security. For much of Japan's history, as you know, the past 60 years, there have been doubts about Japan's commitment to increase international engagement. And so he's trying to communicate to the Chinese that this is a long-term strategic interest of the Japanese. Furthermore, he's trying to address other Southeast Asian countries that are, quite frankly, terrified about the prospect of an undeterred China in the region. And so the main goal was to communicate Japan's continued engagement in the region.
If he wants to do that, then why wouldn't he even mention China in his talk?
Well, I think that it comes down to diplomacy. And anytime a country wants to signal its interest and willingness to contain another, there's two paths. You can take a direct path, which will only exacerbate regional tensions, or a more oblique one, which is very much in line with Japanese thinking on this issue. So think of it as a diplomatic song and dance of being very careful.
He was careful, you're saying, but he also said that there is no dispute regarding the Diaoyu Islands. So some people could take that in a different way.
Absolutely. I think that he has to toe a very careful line. On one hand, he has to communicate his willingness to lead a partnership of many countries that are very intimidated by China's rise. On the other hand, he has to be very careful to not inflame China and perturb China to the point where they might do something erratic, which is a fear that all of these countries share. They're unified in that fear.
Do you think something constructive could come out of these talks, or do you think Shinzo Abe already set the tone for the rest of the summit and this is just all talk?
Well, I think that any time a country goes through a profound diplomatic shift, which is what Japan is going through today, this is a country that has been recessed unto itself for about 60 years after World War II. And they're kind of emerging from that period and trying to establish itself as a regional player. It's going to take much more than one speech for them to get there. But I do think it signals something very profound in the region, which is Japan's willingness to act as a regional guarantor of stability and peace, and not simply rely on the United States to conduct its foreign policy. And so I do see it as a very profound shift.
Talk about the timing of this dialogue at a time when there are a lot of different tensions in that region. And we're talking not just about China and Japan, we're talking about other countries.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting right now because China has found a way to entangle itself with territorial and maritime disputes with almost every country that surrounds it, with the sole exception of North Korea. So I look at this particular moment in history of one in which the international system, right, the area in which, the neighborhood in which China finds itself has been relatively stable really since World War II. And now you have the emergence of this massively populous, rich country that's unified and believes its time in the sun is now, which is China. And quite frankly, a lot of countries are just unsure how to react to this, especially at a time when the United States just seems distracted with other issues. And so I look at Japan's recent forays into the leadership role as really filling a valuable niche to unify these countries, to deter Chinese aggression over various territorial disputes and rocks in the South China Sea.
But could Japan really fill that role? Because, Japan has disputes with other countries as well.
Sure. I think that Japan, the presence of other disputes doesn't disqualify Japan from playing a major leadership role in the region, provided their interests align with the other states that they'd be working with. And ASEAN, in Abe's speech, he mentioned India very specifically, Australia. These countries share Japan's interest in the maintenance of a rule of law and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea that will, for the time being anyway, allow Japan to play that leadership role. Now, if their interests diverge, which they could, states' interests change all the time, then Japan's overtures and attempt to be a leader might not be viewed as legitimate. But I believe that today they are viewed as legitimate, and I believe the Japanese are expressing a common international fear of China's unchecked rise.
Still have a day and so left at the Shangri-La dialogue. We'll have to see how that plays out. Neil Shenai, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much
for having me.